I wasn't planning a scene at the VFW on Collins Road. Paper cloths, salt shakers as anchors, crock pots breathing. A high-E cake leaned toward the edge like it wanted to chunk. Mother smiled, cut the cake, took hugs, stayed polite. Then the clues showed up. Under the silver knife, a flyer with Mother's address. Estate sale. Everything must go. Someone slid it there on purpose. People laughed about retiring. Sister raised a plastic cup. Sunrise Meadows will take great care of you, Sister said. The room clapped the way people clap when they are not sure if the joke is harmless. Plastic cups touched, a few cheers floated up, and somebody bumped the dessert table hard enough to make the cake saw back and forth like a slow pendulum. Sunrise Meadows, the assisted living place near Blair's Ferry where our friend Lois went after she fell on the ice and broke her hip. I stared at the frosting roses and made my face into something polite. The coffee in my hand carried the smell of burnt toast. I decided to be still, and I was, down to my knuckles. On the dessert table, half tucked beneath the silver cake knife, a flyer peeped out. I couldn't read all of it from where I stood, but I saw my address. Estate sale, 412 Juniper Street, Saturday 9 a.m. A sunflower sticker tried to hide the line beneath. Everything must go. There it was, flashing big as the Hawkeye scoreboard when we're losing at home. The first clue. The care someone had taken to slide that flyer under the knife told me everything I needed to know about who intended to control the story of my life. I smiled and thanked the quilters for the beautiful lap throw they'd made me. Blue and white stars, stitched so tidy you could measure your day against those points. I hugged Pastor Jim's wife, Sonia, who smelled like vanilla and winter laundry. I took Tupperware that used to be mine, but had migrated to other kitchens and back again, and I set it carefully in the plastic bin I'd brought to carry everything home. I was gracious. I did not argue. I did not cry. At home, I set the Tupperware in the fridge, lined neatly like soldiers. I hung my cardigan on the peg beside the door with the easy motion of someone who has hung things in that spot for 32 years. In the soft afternoon light, I noticed a sticky note tacked to my phone bill on the counter. The handwriting leaned forward the way Debbie's has since junior high. Sunrise deposit due, Tuesday 10 a.m., use June's account. I set my purse down. I stood still enough that I could hear the clock in the living room. Then I made tea and sat at the round oak table where I had paid bills and signed Christmas cards and once taught a small boy how to glue popsicle sticks together to make a God's eye. It's funny how life gives you test runs for the real thing. You think you're teaching crafts, and what you're really practicing is sitting with your hands in your lap when someone tells you who you are. When the tea was dark and steady in the cup, I picked up the phone and called the elder law attorney who'd helped my neighbor with her will last year. Her name was on a magnet on my fridge because my neighbor is a worrier and brings me magnets like she's giving me seat belts. Marta Levine. A brisk voice picked up on the third ring. "This is Marta. I need to revoke a power of attorney," I said. "Tomorrow morning." "Come at 9, she said. "Bring your ID, whatever paperwork you have, and the name of the person who holds the current POA." "Debbie Coleman," I said. "She's my younger sister." "I'll see you at 9, Miss Whitaker." I slept fine, which surprised me. Maybe it shouldn't have. Sometimes when you've been holding your breath for so long it feels normal, finally exhaling knocks you out like a good benediction. Before the sun found the kitchen window, I pulled on sensible shoes and the pearl earrings I wear when I intend to be taken seriously. I ate peanut butter toast standing up. I put my copy of The Durable Power of Attorney, the broad one Debbie insisted I sign before my hip surgery, into a crisp manila folder and slipped it into my bag. Then I got in the car and drove the familiar route to Marta's office, a low brick building near the courthouse, where the grass is cut in neat lines and the flags are always at the right height. Marta was smaller than I expected and younger in the eyes. She had a Hawkeye's pennant on the wall and a framed picture of a dog with a cone on his head sitting in a lawyer's chair. People who display silly dogs in serious offices tend to be my people. She shook my hand and read my file fast, the way my late husband used to read building specs, mouth flat, eyes moving like they were pulling thread through thick cloth. "This," she said, tapping the old document, "is very broad. It gives your sister authority over banking, real estate, medical decisions. It does not include a monitor or reporting requirement. Did your sister file anything with the recorder's office related to real estate?" "I don't know," I said. "I signed this 2 summers ago before they rolled me into surgery. I was foggy for a while after. Then I got better and didn't think about it." "That happens," she said. "We'll check. Either way, you can revoke today. We'll prepare a revocation of power of attorney and a notice to your sister. We'll file the revocation with the recorder and send certified letters to your bank, your primary care physician, and any facility your sister might try to involve. If there's a guardianship petition brewing, the court may want a letter about your capacity." "I am fine," I said. "I believe you," she said, "but the judge will want a letter. Do you have a doctor who can see you today?" "Dr. Patel. His office is on First Avenue. He's the one who got me off the insomnia pills the urgent care doctor threw at me." "Perfect," she said. "Call them. Ask for a same-day capacity evaluation. I'll draft the revocation and letters now." I made the call. The receptionist was the daughter of a woman I used to sing alto beside at church, and by luck or mercy, she had an opening at 2:30. By noon, Marta had printed the revocation of power of attorney, a notice to Debbie, and cover letters to the bank manager and Dr. Patel. I signed in front of a notary who smells like lilac and keeps a little dish of Werther's Original on the counter, like a bribe for the child inside you that still believes butterscotch can fix anything. At the bank, I asked the manager to place a fraud alert on my accounts and to flag any transaction that referenced the old power of attorney. I handed over a copy of the revocation and watched him read. The way bankers' faces change when they realize they are not dealing with the sad story, but a live situation with time attached to it, is a lesson if you haven't learned it yet. He took a copy and said the words I wanted to hear. "No one moves a dime without you standing right here." At 2:30, Dr. Patel asked me to draw a clock with the hands set to 10 past 11. He asked me to list the months backward and to remember 3 words: apple, table, penny. He asked me what medications I take, and I recited them with doses and times because I am me, and I have always been the sort of person who knows where the lids go. He chuckled and signed a letter on thick paper that said I had no cognitive impairment and was capable of managing my finances and medical decisions. By 4 o'clock, Marta's clerk had filed the revocation at the Lynn County Recorder's Office and faxed copies to Sunrise Meadows, the bank, and Dr. Patel. She came back into Marta's office with a stack of papers and a careful face. "There's also a docket entry," she said. "Your sister filed for emergency guardianship. Hearing is Tuesday at 2. There it was, the clock. Tuesday at 10 for the deposit to Sunrise Meadows. Tuesday at 2 for the hearing. Tick, tick, tick. It's amazing how much more alive you feel when you can hear time moving. I drove home on streets I could drive with my eyes closed and decided to keep them wide open. That night, I ate the green bean casserole from the VFW hall, which had congealed into a polite square by then and tasted exactly like my childhood Sundays. I cracked the kitchen window to the October air and listened to a pair of kids throw a football in the street, their voices lifting and falling. I thought of my mother's hands reaching into a flower bin. I thought of Debbie in pigtails using my sleeve as a napkin. I thought of the summer the tornado sirens failed and Mom herded us into the church basement herself without waiting for anyone to tell her what to do. When Mom died, Debbie and I held hands at the graveside until our fingers went numb. Neither of us had a plan for the part after, where you have to build a life without the person who tells you what the plan is. Saturday morning, I woke to tires on gravel outside and the sound of folding tables knocking against one another. Estate sale shoppers are like geese. They travel in packs and honk their opinions. I brewed coffee and carried a mug to the front steps and sat. It was 8:59. Debbie's SUV rolled up with the back packed to the ceiling. She was out of the driver's seat before the engine cut. "What are you doing home?" she asked, already nervous. "You're not supposed to be here." "This is my home," I said. "If I'm not here, somebody should call the police." "Don't be dramatic, June. We talked about this. You said you wanted a smaller place. You said the stairs are a lot." "I said the stairs are a lot when you have a brand new incision and you're trying to prove to yourself you're immortal," I said. "I did not say I would move into Sunrise Meadows and sell my quilts to strangers in Hawkeye sweatshirts." She breathed in through her nose, nostrils flaring like we were in a kitchen where a pie is in and someone thinks it might burn. "The deposit is Tuesday morning," she said. "Sunrise Meadows has my attorney's fax. They will not accept a deposit on my behalf from anyone but me." Her lips got thin. Rick, her husband, leaned against the SUV like a man wishing he were at a fishing pond. "You think this is about money," she said. "I think this is about control, and that is over. You left the stove on last month. I left a kettle on a warm burner for 10 minutes and turned back to switch it off because the sound of the water made me think of the river. Dr. Patel gave me a letter yesterday. I am fine. You forget things. I forget the names of people I met twice at the co-op and my PIN if my hands are cold. I do not forget my name on the deed or which keys in my purse belong to my life. You always think you're better than me." "No," I said. "I've been acting like I'm responsible for you, and I am not." We stood there for a long time, two women whose lives had twined tight as grapevines around a trellis. Then she got back in the SUV and drove away. The folding tables juddered in the back, and one popped the trunk a crack so a roll of price stickers slid out onto the street and caught under my front tire. I picked them up and stuck them to the edge of the trash can and went inside to fry an egg. Sunday, I sat with the choir in our usual pew. Pastor Jim preached, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no," which felt as if it had been tucked into the Bible for my particular week. After service, Sonia pressed my hands and asked if I needed anything. I said I was okay. People who love you know what it means when you say, "I'm okay," with your eyebrow sideways. Sonia said she'd drop off soup anyway. I said I would not stop her. Monday, I took pumpkin bread across the street to Maddie. She opened the door in a hoodie and socks, her hair wrangled into a bun that looked like it had lost the argument. Her eyes were rimmed red. "Mom says you're confused," she said in a voice so quiet it reminded me she had been a shy girl who videotaped dance routines on the Nintendo Wii in my basement. "Come walk," I said.
We made a slow loop under maples that had decided all at once to catch fire. I told her about the flyer under the cake knife and the sticky note on the phone bill. I told her about the revocation and Dr. Patel's letter and the hearing on Tuesday at 2. Maddie stuffed her hands deeper into her sleeves. "Grandma would have hated this," she said. "Grandma would have told us both to mind our own business and peel potatoes," I said. She laughed her bark laugh and then bit her lip. Did she use your money?" I said. "Your mom asked. I gave. That part is on me." "She always said you liked being needed." "I do like being useful," I said. "It is not the same thing." She kicked a leaf and watched it pinwheel. "I got a job," she said. "Not at the boutique. The pay is garbage there unless I sell 5 pairs of jeans to the same woman. I put in an application at the pharmacy on First Avenue. They're hiring part-time. The shift is boring, but they give you a week's schedule at a time, and I can stop thinking about whether a skirt is on trend. There are no trends in amoxicillin. That sounds steady, I said. Steady counts. At 10 on Tuesday morning, Debbie marched into Sunrise Meadows with a folder and a face that could peel paint. At 10:06, a receptionist walked her back out to the parking lot after confirming my revocation with Marta's office. I know this because 2 different employees called Marta to say so, and Marta, who had promised to tell me anything important, called me while I was wiping down my kitchen counters like a woman scrubbing a deck for a naval inspection. I allowed myself a moment of petty joy and then put the sponge away. At 2 in the afternoon, I sat in a hard chair in room 4B at the Lynn County Courthouse under lights that make everyone look guilty of something. I wore my blue cardigan and the sensible shoes and my late husband's wedding band on a chain because I like to feel its circle warm against my collarbone when I'm doing something that requires remembering who I am. Debbie wore a blazer too bright for October and a necklace with beads that clicked when she moved her head. Her attorney was a man with a haircut that could not be upset. The judge peered over reading glasses and looked down into a file that held pieces of my life printed on rectangles of paper. "Miss Coleman," he said, looking at Debbie's name, "you're petitioning for emergency guardianship of your sister. On what grounds?" "She's declining," Debbie said, hand fluttering to her throat like the star of a high school play. "I have a letter from my physician," I said when the judge looked at me. I stood, and the clerk took the letter and handed it to him. "I also have a revocation of the power of attorney signed and filed on Friday, along with certified notices to my bank and the facility referenced in the petition." He read. He flipped to the next page. He did the thing with his tongue that people do when the story they were expecting is not the story in their hands. He slid his glasses down his nose and looked over them at me like I was a freshman he liked better than he wanted to admit. "Dr. Patel's letter is clear. No cognitive impairment. Miss Whitaker, do you have support at home?" "I have neighbors and a church that show up with casseroles faster than you can sneeze. And I can hire help on my terms if I decide I want it." "Petition denied," he said, tapping the file. "Miss Coleman, this court expects family members to respect revocations and adult autonomy. Any further attempts to control your sister's assets could rise to financial exploitation. We are adjourned." In the hallway, Debbie caught my sleeve. "You're cruel," she said. "After everything I've done." "We confuse doing a lot with doing right," I said. "You're ungrateful." "I am grateful for 1,000 things. I am not grateful for someone deciding my life for me." She blinked fast. For a second, a thin thread of something that used to be between us tightened. She used to hide inside my coat during tornado drills. I used to count her freckles until she fell asleep. I looked at her face, which is not my face, but carries enough of the same scaffolding that I can see myself in it, and I wanted to put my arms around her. Not yet. I walked out into air that smelled like wet leaves and courthouse steps that could tell 1,000 stories of people who survived the afternoon and went home to make soup. That first week felt like standing up on a bus after a long ride and realizing you still know how to steady yourself. I carried in the trash can by myself. I bought 2 new smoke detectors and tested them with a pen. I made a list of 5 people I could call at any hour. I called none of them because the list was enough. Maddie came over with hot cocoa, and we sat at my kitchen table the way we have sat since she was little, when she used to insist on the blue plastic cup because it tastes colder. She pulled a folded paper from her pocket and smoothed it flat. "My first pay stub," she said, $428.16 after they take out taxes and for some reason retirement. "That's how you get to be my age and have a little set aside," I said. "Good reason."
She pointed to the numbers. They took out $36 for Medicare, she said. I feel like a grown-up. You are, I said, and grown-ups can still cry on their aunt's shoulder. She did for a minute, head on my shoulder, making the same little huffing sound she used to make when she lost a Barbie shoe down the vent. Then she sat up and scrubbed her face with the sleeve of her hoodie like sleeves or Kleenex and looked at me hard. Mom says you humiliated her, I said. A judge said no to a thing she wanted. I did not control her. That's sort of the point. She says you always thought you were in charge. I used to think being the big sister meant being responsible for everyone. It does not. It means being responsible for yourself and being kind to the rest. Maddie tucked her hair behind one ear. I told her I got the pharmacy job, she said. She said I should have taken the boutique job because the discount is better. I told her I can't buy rent with a discount on jeans. I laughed, which felt like letting a screen door slam in a satisfying way. You will do fine, I said. I can't tell you how, but I know it. Fine looks like making meals with whatever's on sale at Hy-Vee and learning the sound your car makes when it needs an oil change. Fine looks like remembering the smell of cinnamon in October because you weren't scrolling your phone and missing it. Is that wisdom? She asked, smiling sideways at me. That's cinnamon. Wisdom is saying no before you mean yes and keeping the door locked while you think. I did small things that were not small. I called the locksmith and had the front door lock replaced because it had bugged me for 5 years and I had accepted bugged as normal. I took a bag of sweaters I'd stopped wearing to the consignment store near the river and used the $27 in credit to buy a pair of sturdy gloves. I started a list on my fridge called Things I Put Off That Didn't Kill Me and wrote dentist, smoke detector battery, read mail the day it arrives, tell Debbie no in tidy pen. On Thursday, I carried a stack of quilts to the farmer's market and set them in a neat pile beside a sign that said, Handmade by June. I have made quilts my whole life because some of us men, regardless of whether anything is torn. The lady in the Hawkeye sweatshirt from the would-be estate sale stopped by and looked embarrassed and ran her palm across a blue-on-white star pattern like tucking it might apologize for something she hadn't done. Estate sale lady, she said, then clapped her hand over her mouth. I'm sorry. It's all right, I said. Turns out I'm not for sale. She laughed, and then she bought a quilt for her granddaughter. $60 changed hands. I took a picture of the cash, not because I needed proof, but because sometimes it helps to remember that money earned and money given are not the same flavor when they sit on your tongue. On Sunday after church, I met with Pastor Jim and the treasurer to plan our coat drive. We always run short of kid coats in sizes 6 through 10 and men's tall zip-ups. I started a little fund in my husband's name, the Whitaker Fund, for kids who need steel-toe boots to start apprenticeships. This year there were 5, 1 going into HVAC, 3 into welding, and 1 kid named Sal who wanted to be an electrician because he liked the way the world looked when the lights flicked back on after a storm. I signed a check to the workwear shop for 5 pairs of boots. The pen felt good in my hand because I was telling my money where to go instead of watching it wander out of my purse and forget to send a postcard. I was sweeping the back steps the next week when my phone pinged with an alert from the bank about a declined attempt to open a store card in my name. The bank's fraud department called within 5 minutes. The man on the phone sounded like he'd gotten up early and wanted a donut. He confirmed the declined attempt and asked if I had tried to buy patio furniture on the internet. No, I said. We're done with patio for the season. He laughed politely and put a red flag on my file and recommended I freeze my credit with the 3 bureaus. I did, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the instructions printed in big type because I didn't feel like squinting. I felt the clean click of a door locking from the inside. A simple good thing you can do for yourself is an astonishing drug. Around that time, the ladies' Bible study asked me to speak at the senior center about avoiding scams. I stood in a room that smelled like ginger cookies and lotion, and I said the sentence I had been carrying around like a penny in my shoe. Your name is your first home. I told them about my week and the paper and the clock and the judge. I told them about the way we put our names on things without noticing who else has a copy of the key. I told them that saying no is a sentence that does not require an apology. When I finished, 8 different women took my hand, each with a story she had been afraid to say out loud. We stood in a circle like women have forever and let the shape of it hold us. Debbie did not call. Silence can be a mercy before it becomes a malice. Rick texted once, a picture of their porch with a cracked plastic chair and a caption that read, "Thrift store fine, $6," like a man practicing scarcity, and I felt a weird relief at learning they still had a sense of the ordinary. The next week, Maddie sent me a picture of her new work shoes and the pharmacy schedule pinned to a corkboard with her name written in real ink. "Hot cocoa on me," she wrote. I said yes and let her pay at Main Street Diner and watched the way her shoulders sat a little differently, as if they had finally decided to be hers. I got the call about the second guardianship petition 2 weeks later. Marta met me in the hallway outside the courtroom with a folder and a face that told me she was already bored by the other side's argument and would not mind annihilating it for sport. She filed a new petition. No emergency this time. Claim you need a guardian for financial management because of evidence of mismanagement. The evidence, as far as I can see, is that you spend money on quilts in church. I also spent money on a new smoke detector and steel-toe boots, I said, and I froze my credit. Bring your list of things I put off that didn't kill me if you want to, she said. I am not above a little theater. I did not bring the list. The judge didn't need theater. He needed documents and clean sentences and a woman who could look him in the eye and say, "I am fine," without blinking. He got those. Petition denied again. The judge looked at Debbie at the end, and his voice softened around the edges. "Miss Coleman," he said, "our system presumes competence. Your sister has acted within her rights. You'll need to adjust to that." We walked out into the hallway where the vending machine hums like a bad radio. Debbie kept her eyes on the floor. When we reached the double doors, she spoke without looking at me. "What am I supposed to do if I'm not fixing you?" I said, "You find out by not fixing me. You start with yourself." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I don't know how," she said. "You learn," I said. She nodded once, sharp as a tack going into pine. She didn't hug me. I didn't ask. I kept moving. Movement is easier than meaning. I cleaned out the hall closet and found my mother's recipe for pie crust tucked into the pages of a church cookbook that includes 3 different versions of Jell-O salad that can bring a person low if she thinks about it too long. On the back of the recipe card, Mom had written a note in her small cursive. "Don't overwork it." I laughed out loud at the way life writes jokes in your own handwriting and pretends it's not trying to teach you something. I started walking at the mall when the wind turned sharp. There are retirees who walk laps like they're training for the Olympics, and there are grandmothers who walk with strollers and a ring of keys that clack. I walked in my sensible shoes and waved at the mall cops like we were in a small town and whistled at the way the holiday lights went up early because retail thinks it can trick joy into visiting. A week before Thanksgiving, Debbie showed up on my porch with a paper grocery sack and a face I hadn't seen since we were teenagers, the kind of face that has cried in the car and decided not to in front of you. Rick sat in the truck with both hands at 10 and 2, like a man who knows he should not march into any more rooms uninvited. "I brought apples," she said, "from the orchard. They were on sale if you bought 2 bags. I stepped aside and let her in. The house smelled like cinnamon because I had toasted pecans earlier, and everything I own now smells faintly of toast. She set the apples on the counter, and we stood there like women in a painting by someone who loves kitchens and truth. "I'm mad at you," she said. "I know," I said. "And I'm mad at me," she said. "And I don't know what to do with either one." "We could peel apples," I said. So we did.
We stood at the sink and used the wide peelers that fit your palm like they were made for it. Debbie's peel came off in one long, perfect spiral, the way hers always has, and mine came off in polite segments because I've never had patience for showing off. She broke the silence first. "Did you mean it?" she said, "about not being responsible for me?" "Yes," I said. "I love you. I am not responsible for you." "What if I fail?" "You will. So will I. It's part of the deal." She put the peeler down harder than she needed to, and then picked it up again like she was sorry for the peeler. "She's been going to Al-Anon. Don't get excited. I sat in the parking lot twice before I went in. And then I listened and didn't talk. They passed around a basket and I put in $1. It hurt." "The first thing always hurts," I said. "The lady who led it said codependency makes you feel useful while it steals your life," she said. Eyes on the apple. "Control is love with a choke chain." "That woman is smarter than me," I said. We made pies. We did not solve anything. Sometimes the first miracle is that you didn't make it worse. She took a pie home to Rick and one to Maddie. I kept one here and ate a slice warm and wrote in my diary that night, beneath Mom's recipe, the words I had been saying out loud to rooms full of ladies with lotion on their hands. Love without boundaries becomes control. Control without consent becomes abuse. I choose love with a lock on the gate. The day after Thanksgiving, Maddie and I stood in a line that wrapped around the block for the lighting of the city tree. We got hot chocolate from a cart that charged too much and used whipped cream like you use spackle. She wore a hat with a pom-pom the size of a grapefruit and looked 16 in the way that makes you want to stand between her and the weather. "Mom wants to host Christmas Eve," she said. "Does she now?" And I managed not to choke on cocoa. "She'll be fine. She's making a chart." Then she rolled her eyes to the sky. "A chart. Lord help us," I said, and felt the little private joy of being the one who does not have to be in charge of the chart. Christmas came the way Christmas does when you're not trying to make it look like the commercials. We ate ham that was a little dry and laughed about it. Rick told a story about dropping his phone in a bucket of drywall mud. Debbie set up a cocoa bar and made Maddie take pictures of it, even though nobody but Debbie cared about the way the marshmallows were arranged. I took leftovers home and made split-pea soup with the ham bone and listened to carols on the radio that sounded like they were recorded in a church basement by people who sing because they mean it. January showed up with sharp teeth. I knit in the evening and watched the kind of TV where people fix houses and sell them to other people who think shiplap solves loneliness. I bought a new shovel with a handle that doesn't bite the palm and reminded myself that a good tool is a piece of grace. Marta invited me to coffee one morning in February. She wanted to check in and also to tell me about a widow who lived alone on the east side who might like a walking buddy. I said I would meet the widow for coffee at the library, and we did. 2 women who had learned the same lesson in different houses. We walked laps in the library like it was a church, which in a way it is. On a Tuesday in March, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman introduced herself as the coordinator at Sunrise Meadows in a voice like someone who drinks lemon water and reads the newspaper in a sunroom. "I wanted to let you know," she said, "that your name has been removed from our call list. There was some confusion here in the fall. We have updated our records." "Thank you," I said, and meant it in a way that made my mouth feel clean. The thing about getting your life back is that your days become full of small, clean satisfactions. The sound of your washer finishing a cycle exactly when you expected it. The way your knees feel when you get up from a chair and there is a little ache, but it is the ache of walking, not the ache of dread. The smell of the library stacks when you slide your fingers along the spines of books that have been read by people you will never meet. In April,
The Whitaker Fund paid for steel-toe boots for 5 more kids and 1 hard hat because Saul's head turned out to be exactly the sort that requires a special order. Pastor Jim talked about the boots from the pulpit, which I didn't love because I prefer my good deeds quiet. But then, after service, an older man I know only as Mr. Harold put a 20 in my hand and said, "For the kids' feet." And I decided not to fight the kind of attention that multiplies good. Debbie relapsed a little in May, if that's the word you use for a woman who has built a personality out of handing the scissors to anyone within reach. She called to ask if I could co-sign a small loan for a new air conditioner because theirs had died during a heat wave. I took a breath and said the sentence I had practiced like scales. "I love you. I won't co-sign. I can bring a box fan." There was a silence that sounded like a wire being pulled taut. Then, to my tiny shock and large relief, she said, "Bring the fan." I brought 2. We sat on her couch in air that felt like an open mouth and let the fans blow the edges of our hair around like we were in a music video. Rick came home carrying a window unit from a neighbor who had a spare in his garage because that is how this world goes when you let it. Someone always has a spare in their garage. Debbie laughed for real. The laugh did not sound like a woman who had a secret agenda. It sounded like the woman I grew up with before we taught each other our worst tricks. On the first Saturday in June, I set up a table at the farmer's market with my quilts. I priced them honestly. People came by and ran hands over the patterns and told me about their grandmothers. A young woman with a baby in a sling stopped and cried when she touched a scrap of a shirt that looked exactly like something her grandfather wore in the shop. "It's funny," she said, tears making a clean line through her sunscreen, "how cloth can hold a person." I sold her the quilt for $20 less than I'd marked it and slipped a note into the bag that said, "Love without a choke chain." Maddie showed up with iced coffees and a grin that told me news before she said it. "I got offered full-time at the pharmacy, benefits and everything. They said if I want it, they'll help me do the certification to be a tech." "That sounds like a yes," I said. "It does," she said, cheeks going pink with the kind of pride that doesn't brag. "Mom said she's proud of me. She also said she misses my discount at the boutique, and I told her she could buy her jeans at Goodwill like God intended." "Bless you," I said, and meant it. Summer came soft and then hard and then soft again, as Iowa summers do. I watered the mums and pulled the weeds that grow up where you forget to look. I got a letter from a boy named Saul in ballpoint pen on notebook paper, the kind of letter that tells you schools are still teaching cursive to a few kids who want to make their words look dressed. "Thank you for the boots," he wrote. "My apprenticeship starts on Monday." My mom cried when I brought them home. In a good way. It's weird, but I think my feet feel more serious in these. I put the letter on my fridge under the magnet from Marta's office and smiled every time I reached for the milk. One evening late in July, Debbie and I sat on my front steps with popsicles that turn your tongue a terrible color. The sky was the purple blue that looks like a bruise and means tomorrow will be hot. She picked at the stick like it might have splinters. "I applied for a job," she said, not looking at me. "At the boutique," I said, because I am sometimes a little mean. She snorted. "At the elementary school," she said. "Kitchen, part-time. I like feeding people." "You do," I said. "They asked for references," she said. "I put you down. You don't have to say anything nice." "I'll tell the truth," I said. "You show up when you say you will. You like charts. You have a laugh that makes the room less tight." She made a small sound like someone who had been waiting a long time at a doctor's office and had finally been called back. She took a breath in that felt like she'd been holding it since the VFW hall. "I'm sorry, June," she said. "Not for the toast exactly, though that was ugly. For the part where I built my life on top of yours and called it love. I am sorry for the part where I let you," I said. "I helped you learn you could." We sat there a long time. Women on steps in a Midwestern town on a night that lifts up the cicadas like choir. Rick came by with a bowl of cut watermelon and set it down without comment. He has never been a man of many words, but he has good instincts for fruit. In August, Debbie started her job at the school. The first day, she sent me a picture of her hairnet with a caption that read, "Dignity comes in many forms." I wrote back, "So does love," and included a watermelon emoji because I am a woman who learns new tricks with her thumbs if the payoff is a laugh. At the end of September, there was a storm that ripped through town the way storms do now, sudden and modern and intent on being remembered. The next morning, I walked the neighborhood with a roll of heavy trash bags and a willingness to hold ladders. The man on the corner with the bad back waved me up a steps, and I held the screen door while his grandson brought out carpet that had gone soft with dirty water. Debbie arrived with sandwiches and 2 women from her Al-Anon group carrying a toolbox in a way that told me they understood the sacrament of having the right wrench when you need it. We put the world back together in small squares. On a bright Saturday in October, exactly a year after the VFW haul, I sat at the farmer's market with quilts and a sign that said, "Pay what you can, keep what you need." People stopped and asked me how that worked, and I said, "It works the way everything should." And sometimes they nodded because they had learned the same lesson. And sometimes they looked at me like I was mad, which frankly I have been, and it turns out you survived that too. The lady in the Hawkeye sweatshirt returned with a granddaughter who had grown 6 inches and needed a new quilt for a bed that was no longer twin. They picked one with blue squares like lakes. The granddaughter touched the seams and said, "Did you sew these with your real hands?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "That makes it better." And I laughed because life is merciful enough to hand you lines like that when you need them. I still make lists. On my fridge, a new one reads, "Things I did that made today easier." It says, "Laid out clothes the night before," and "Put gas in car before the light came on," and "Told the truth right away." Some days the list is short. Some days I forget to write it down at all, because the habit has moved into my bones and I no longer need the paper to see it. Sometimes I see women in the grocery store looking at the apples like they're looking for permission to buy themselves something beautiful. I want to tell them to buy the Honey Crisps because they're worth the extra, but that's not my business unless they make it so. Instead, I offer my cart if I'm done with it and try to make eye contact with the checker like she's a person whose day matters to me, because it does. Debbie slips and then she steadies. She calls and asks, "Do you need anything?" And when I say, "I could use a ride to the oil change on Thursday," she says, "What time?" She comes over some Fridays with apples and a look on her face like she is practicing not being in charge, which is a look I recognize because I wore it all last fall. Maddie visits most Sundays after her shift. She still buys hot cocoa sometimes and makes a face when it's too sweet, then drinks it anyway, which is as good a summary of adulthood as any. There are still people who think I did a cruel thing. They say it out of the side of their mouths, and I pretend I don't hear because arguing about it would require me to live in their heads, and I prefer my own. There are also people who press my hand and say thank you in a way that makes me think of a time 4 benches back in a church service when a stranger was there exactly when you needed to sit down. When you're 70, your skin remembers more than your mind sometimes, and I think that's all right. My skin remembers the weight of the estate sale flyer under the cake knife and the way the sticky note on the phone bill looked like a dare. My hands remember signing the paper that handed my name to someone else, and they remember signing the paper that took it back. They remember the feel of the courthouse bench and the cool air of freedom after the judge said, "Petition denied." They remember peeling apples next to a woman who is my sister, even when she is wrong. They remember folding quilts, holding ladders, passing out sandwiches, slipping $20 discreetly under a plate edge, and they know the difference between charity that makes you small and love that makes you stand up straighter. I am not a saint, I have been mean in my head to people who didn't deserve it. I have wished petty endings on strangers who cut me off in traffic and then felt the prick of regret later. I have stood in my kitchen at midnight and eaten a slice of pie with my fingers because forks felt too fussy. But I kept my name. I learned to hold my own hand at the bank and the courthouse and my front door. I learned that I can tell a woman I love her and still not hand her my keys. If I could go back to that moment at the VFW hall, I would still stand very still. I would still fold my napkin the way Mom taught me, neat corners, square in my lap. I would still look at the flyer under the cake knife and take in the message without giving them the gift of my first reaction. Then I would drive myself home, past the same gas station and the little shop that sells garden flags with seasons on them, and I would call the same attorney and the same doctor, and I would say the same sentences in the same calm voice. Because I have learned it down to my knuckles. A life is not a series of disasters to be prevented by the person who worries most. A life is a line of small choices that add up to a shape you can recognize in any light. Mine looks like an oak table and a blue cardigan and a stack of papers filed at the recorder's office because a woman decided that her name was not a thing you borrow. It looks like a niece whose paycheck sits heavy and proud in her pocket, and a sister whose hands know how to feed hungry children without drawing blood. At night, I crack the window and let the air in, even in February. The city sounds like tires on wet streets and a far train. My house creaks like old wood does when it feels safe. I write in my diary, sometimes one line and sometimes a page. Last week's line read, I told a woman at the senior center that saying no is a kindness when yes would be a lie. Yesterday's read, bought Honeycrisps. Today's will read, Maddie's laugh sounded like it did in 3rd grade when her front teeth were too big for her face. If you came to my house right now, I would put on the kettle and bring out the good mugs and the plate Sonia gave me with painted leaves marching around the edge. I would tell you where the bathroom is without getting up, and I would ask how your mother is, even if your mother died 10 years ago, because that's how we talk around here. We inquire about the dead as if they still go to the store. We'd sit at the table, and I'd tell you the short version of this story, because the long version is better for walking. I would tell you that love can be a lock or a gate, and the difference is whether you hand someone the key and say, come in when I call, or you tie it to your wrist and stand watch like your name matters. I would tell you the sentence I tell myself when my heart tries to make generosity a way of avoiding the truth. The love you have to buy isn't worth what it costs. Then I point at the pile on the counter and ask if you want a slice and a fork, or if you'd prefer to stand in the kitchen like a woman who finally got to choose her own life and eat it with her fingers, laughing, while the October air comes in the window and the quilts on the back of the chair look like lakes and the sound of your own breath feels like permission. A month from now, when the mums are tired and the wind has a new edge, I'll put a wreath on the door and a string of lights around the railing like I always do. Debbie will call to ask if I want to do the stockings at her place, and I'll say yes, and then I will say, I'll bring oranges, because my mother always put oranges in the toes of socks at Christmas, as if she were stuffing the year with light. Maddie will arrive late from the pharmacy and fall asleep on my couch with her arm flung over her face because young people are always too tired from the right things, and it is beautiful. Rick will fix the hinge on the back door because hinges are never finished needing love. We will eat too much ham and stand at the sink and argue about how wet a dish should be when you dry it. Someone will burn the rolls, and someone else will eat one anyway out of loyalty. The cat will sneak a sliver of turkey and act like he pulled it from the bird himself. And I will stand by the window for a minute in the middle of it all and look at the tiny streetlights wearing their halos and think, this is what it looks like when you draw a line and the world goes on and you do too.
The neighbors will put out their trash cans in a neat line like a parade of gray-blue soldiers, and somewhere in a house that still smells like drywall dust and hope, a kid will lace up steel-toe boots for the first day of a life he will build with his hands because someone told him he could. I do not know everything, but I know this as surely as I know the difference between a pie crust mixed too long and one that will flake just right. Being needed is not the same as being loved, and if you cannot tell the difference, the world will spin you like pocket change and call it devotion. Hold your name like a key. Keep a lock on the gate. When you call people in, mean it. When you need quiet, mean that too. Live in a way that lets you sleep with the window cracked, even in October, and wake up to the truth you set on your table the night before. Your own name, warm and clean in your mouth. Yours to say, yours to keep.